My thesis today is that faith in Christ raises ambition and spurs heroic efforts. That's my thesis. And it can seem counterintuitive because the notion of Christian heroism is for many suspect. According to Nietzsche, Judaism and Christianity have destroyed the possibilities of heroism. He asserts that biblical religion has sponsored a slave revolt in morality. By his account, Christianity champions life-denying weakness and servile submission, calling them the pinnacles of virtue, while at the same time deriding life-affirming strength, self-assertion, and great accomplishment as evil. Now, on its face, I think Nietzsche's claims can seem plausible. The words of Jesus on the cross, in the Garden of Gethsemane, epitomize an ethic of self-denial, not my will, but thine be done. Or compare Achilles in the Iliad with Abraham. The swift-footed Greek warrior is a man of action. His supreme excellence on the battlefield controls events. By contrast, the desert nomad is the paradigm of faithful obedience, even to the point of being willing to sacrifice his beloved son. True heroes magnify themselves, Nietzsche argues. They embrace the will to power. Biblical religion encourages the opposite. It tells us that we should embrace self-sacrifice and self-denial for the sake of obedience to Christ. Nietzsche's argument, widely known and believed by some. But I say, appearances can deceive us. Heroic action and devoted obedience do not work at cross purposes. Rather, and this is going to be my argument, heroism arises out of a spirit of love and devotion. Now, for the theologically minded among you, this false opposition between obedience and heroism is similar to the false assumptions that are made about the relation of grace and free will. But I'm not going to digress into the theological topic in spite of my spending too much time reading books of theology. I guess, can you do that? But many hours reading books of theology. So let's look more closely at Achilles. The dramatic action of the Iliad turns on the great warrior's wounded honor, leading to his petulant decision to retire from the battlefield. Agamemnon offers to make amends, piling wealth upon honors that are going to do more than compensate for any wrong. But appeals to Achilles' self-interest, even appeals to his common duties, are of no avail. As those who have read the epic poem know, it's the death of Patroclus, his beloved friend, that rouses the soul of Achilles. The Greek hero does not seek greatness or power or dominion. Rather, he seeks to avenge his friend's death. And note well, this desire, the desire for vengeance, is one of love's dark demands. Now, I don't want to be seen as commending revenge as a motive. But my point is this. Contrary to the impression given by Nietzsche, strength and mastery are not self-propagating qualities. Nobility of soul does not emerge out of an innate potential like an oak tree from an acorn. In the Song of Roland, the hero does not think, I wish to do great deeds, and then determine that a courageous stand against the Saracen infidels is just the ticket to fame. Roland sacrifices himself in a great blast of his horn, not to become a hero. Rather, he is a hero because he was a faithful servant to the end. Now, I do not dispute that some are motivated by the desire to dominate others. Being on top, after all, feeds the ego. And I do not dispute that some seek power for its own sake and others wealth. But self-serving goals are not powerful motives. If they were, they would have kept Achilles on the battlefield. and the Gordon Geckos of the world would be remembered as founders of great nations and movers of history. I submit that without love, zelos, as Alex was laying it out, ambition, strength, and talent are largely impotent. Heroism requires transcendence, and the engine of transcendence is love, because love seeks to serve the beloved. Now, in the medieval tradition, the knight errant is the paradigmatic heroic figure. He leaves the comfort of his familiar circle of comrades to do brave deeds. He rejects, in other words, he rejects safetyism. But he does not do so to prove himself or to win celebrity. The knight, in some of the poems, seeks to bring honor to the noble lady whose love he hopes to become worthy of. Or, in other poems, he's on a dangerous quest for an elusive and transcendent goal such as the Holy Grail. In his wry and ironical commentary on this poetic tradition, Cervantes has Don Quixote pronounce, "A true knight must have a mistress." While the exploits of the deluded nobleman are comical, his statement is correct. The hero must have a love interest. He must desire something, seek something, serve something. Without the pull of love, a strong and talented man cannot escape the gravitational force of prudence. He cannot overcome the instinct of self-preservation. Love incites risk-taking. It overthrows common sense. The greater the passion of love, the more extreme are the measures we will take to serve the beloved. A man bewitched by the image of colonizing Mars is far more likely to expend every resource to attain this goal than someone who calculates that such a deed will make him rich and famous. So allow me to restate this truth in a different way. One mark of heroism is achievement. The word comes from the Latin phrase ad caput, to bring to the head, to bring to a head, to bring to fulfillment, to bring to completion. The greatest achievements are remote and difficult. And if our motives are self-serving, we'll come to a point at which the sacrifices that are needed will begin to seem too much, too extreme, and too dangerous. We're back to the problem of safetyism. The voice of me-centered thinking will whisper to us, it's just not worth it. Love is otherwise. Love is reckless. If the object of our love is great and the desire to serve its purposes is strong, then we will transcend calculations of self-interest. Love ignores today's counsel to seek a healthy work-life balance. Love drives us to test our limits, and in doing so, we court the possibility of failure. Indeed, many heroes in poetry and literature meet tragic endings. They do not, in fact, find the Holy Grail. But we admire them for their ambition, and we see greatness in their having aimed so high. And this view of greatness, evident even in failure, is the deeper meaning of Shakespeare's famous line, "It is better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all." And so I return to this notion of Christian heroism. Is there a love greater than the ambition? In its ambition, is there a love greater in its ambition than love of God? Can one aim higher than sanctity? Far from undermining the culture of greatness, Christianity encourages heroism. So I want to come at this argument for Christian heroism now in a different way, this time by returning to Nietzsche. He worried that Western culture, modern Western culture, discourages life-affirming heroism. And I think he was right to do so. He's right to harbor these worries. And here's a summary of Nietzsche's summary of our anti-heroic culture. We suspect, he writes, that things will continue to go down, to become thinner, more good-natured, more prudent, more comfortable, more mediocre, more indifferent. I share his suspicion. But what, I ask, has made our culture thinner? What has eliminated the transcendent horizon? From whence comes the mentality that we're just utility maximizing animals, or that the noble ideals of our tradition are nothing more than masks for patriarchy, racial supremacy, and cultural imperialism? Now, I will allow we can debate the causes of the thinness of our culture, but I dare say it would be absurd to assert that the flat and metaphysically vacant worldview of the 21st century has arisen because men have gone to monasteries to devote themselves to ascetic purification and ceaseless prayer so that it might serve God more perfectly. And what about devotion to prudent self-protection, careful calculation of risks, and the pursuit of mere comfort? In the worship of the Catholic Church, believers recite litanies of saints, nearly all of whom were martyred for their faith. Consumed by the wild beasts in a Roman arena, Saints Perpetua and Felicity bear witness to a heroic disdain for safety. Moreover, modern objections turn on one or another concern that the life of faith is too extreme and too irresponsible. Belief in miracles, that's unwarranted. A strict sexual ethics, that's unrealistic. Wanton charity, that's imprudent. A great deal of modern education itself counsels what I would call intellectual safetyism. It warns us against believing too much, and it warns us against believing too ardently. And not surprisingly, in modern academic life, Christianity is rejected. It's just too unsafe. And then there's Nietzsche's final anathema, indifference. How can we have a culture that encourages heroism when we believe that you have your truth and I have mine? The soft relativism promises to leave us alone. If nothing is worth sacrificing for, then no one will be troubled to do so. And it counsels quiet self-acceptance. If nothing is worth striving for, then we need not sacrifice, and we can get on with just cultivating our private gardens. Again, Christianity is many things, but it is not party to indifference. To the contraries, liberals and progressives lament Christian intransigence and rejection of their projects. Now, Nietzsche wished to midwife a renewal of Christian greatness. Not Christian greatness, excuse me. Nietzsche wished to midwife a renewal of human greatness. And I credit him with an apt description of the drab and dispirited character of modern life. But his animus against Christianity blinded him to the causes of our decidedly unheroic culture. He did not recognize that the enemies of love, especially the enemies of a supernatural love of God, are the very same enemies of heroism. Moreover, his reductive and anti-metaphysical doctrine of will to power has become one of the most powerful enemies of love. And I would also add, Alex Petkas mentioned contempt as the opposite of zeal, that Nietzsche's writings are riddled with contempt. So it's not surprising that he winds up being really a leading father, not of heroism, but of the last man. Speaking of Yale men, I'm thinking of Tom Buchanan in The Great Gatsby. He's a Yale man, imbued with a kind of Nietzschean view that life is just about power. And he's definitely a last man character. So again, I would submit Nietzsche is not a father of heroism, but a father of the last man. So let me end with a recent experience. I was with a Dominican friar. As always, he was wearing his white habit, the flowing gown. And truth be told, it's an odd outfit. But at Greenwich Village, where we were walking in New York, people often look odder still. Men in dresses, women in leather outfits, tattooing, piercing, and so on. But I have observed that the white habit attracts stares, whereas everybody just takes for granted all the oddball people. Passers-by recognize that the habit represents something other than self-expression or the display of one's identity. It betokens a remarkable commitment and suggests an arduous adventure, which is to say, spiritual heroism. And that spiritual heroism is the foundation for renewing a culture capable of reckless loves. So in conclusion, I would say this. You can certainly think that Christianity is false, but it seems far-fetched to claim that Christianity does anything other than inspire heroic ambition. Thank you.